Hello Painting 2 students. Our next project is to create a monochromatic painting of a still life, and the still life is going to be of simple boxes that are wrapped in paper. Before we can really focus on the painting portion of this, we have to be good observers and look at our subject and figure out the best way to compose the piece and to sketch it out. So I'm close to my subject looking at all the boxes, and I could just use a regular pencil. If you don't want the pencil marks to be very visible, you could use a 4H pencil. Opposite, if you really want the marks to be visible and to figure out in a loose way where this is, you could use even a graphite stick. Okay. Just to be safe, I'm going to start with just a regular pencil, and I've decided to compose this picture horizontally. You can choose to compose the picture vertically. The main thing is that you don't want a ton of background space. Any background space though that we have, we will activate with a color in the background of your choosing. A lot of times students will choose the complement of the color of the boxes, or they'll pick another one that they think is going to make those boxes stand out. Okay, so basically what I want to do first is figure out how high up I want this piece to go and how wide I want this piece to go. So for me, I don't want to have a lot of dead space at the top. That's my priority. Okay, so I'm going to look, and from my vantage point, say, you know what, I want that top box to hit about there on the piece, and I'm going to just kind of very lightly figure out the angles, and sometimes you can do that by holding up your pencil and figuring out where those angles are. All these are loose strokes that are eventually going to be painted over. Okay. Now I also think it's a good idea to start at the top and work your way down. So when I come to this point, I'm realizing to myself that I cannot see the bottom of that box because the other box is in the way of that. So I'm again looking at the angle, trying to figure out how far down that should be and how wide it should be. Okay, and if I make a mistake, it's not a big deal. What I will say is kind of important though, is that you're not moving your head around too much, because every time you move your head or even change your posture, you're creating a different vantage point for yourself. So you want to try to be pretty consistent about where that is, and that's what erasers are for. If you mess up, then go ahead and make those changes. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and show you a time lapse of how this is going to work out so that I don't have to waste too much of your time. Okay, so the time lapse you just saw showed the basic drawing process. Now it's time for the fun part, which is painting. We're going to do this in a monochromatic color scheme. You can see that I chose kind of a red-orange color for my base color. And then for my highlights, I will add white. For my shadows, I will add black. For my midtones, I will either use the base color or just a gray mixed with that base color. You're going to notice as you watch this next time lapse that I start by using larger brushes, and then as it goes, I work down to smaller brushes. You'll also hopefully notice that I'm trying to paint the whole picture at once, a little bit to the left, right, up and down. I'm not focusing all my attention on one set of details, okay? So you're mapping that out in layers, doing broad strokes at the beginning over the whole surface, and then as you go, doing smaller details on top of that. You'll also probably notice that I'm adding more water to my paint at the beginning of my painting and less water towards the end. Okay, as you can see, I mapped out a lot of the midtones and some of the beginnings of the shadows. I had to go and get new white paint just because, and you'll notice with your own that that starts to get dirty real quick. This time I even went and I got an extra mug of water, and I'm going to try to consciously, if I'm doing shadows, use one mug of water, and if I'm doing highlights, use another, just so that the black and the white don't mix, because what that'll eventually do is dull down your colors. Now at this stage, if you'd like, you could take a break from the boxes themselves and start to map out your background color. I am going to just proceed with the boxes though at this stage, just to kind of see them through till the end. But as you're painting, you might want to start to think, like, what background color is going to make these really pop. So I have a warm color here that I have for my foreground. I'm thinking I'm probably going to use like a teal or another cool color for my background to make that a real vibrant contrast. Alright, painting students, so I'm not completely done with my boxes, but you can kind of see I'm about halfway through painting them. I've mapped out the brightest highlights, or at least some of them. A lot of the midtones, they're watered down, so I need to put some more layers on them, and then start to put in the deepest shadows. What I'm going to do, and this is kind of like, I would recommend this about at this stage, just so you don't get sick of the painting, because it's very easy to get frustrated with something that has this many complex shadows and highlights, is I'm going to shift and just paint the background at this point. And this doesn't have to be decorative, it can just be a solid color. If you want to create some variety and going from light to dark, or to make it look like a vignette or something like that where it's dark on the edges and then gets lighter as it goes in, you're welcome to do that. Like I said, I'm choosing a cool color so that this contrasts the salmon color of my boxes. Okay, so obviously it's not completely done, but hopefully you get a pretty good idea of where we're headed with this. I think the cool color background really contributes to these boxes popping out now. This is getting me excited to paint some more. That's the idea. About halfway through, you want to shift to that background. That'll give you the energy that you need to keep pushing and to perfect this. Now, one of the things that I do like about mine, and is one of those things that over time, with experience, you learn, is there is such a thing as overworking the paint, okay? And what I'm trying to do is let my own style show through at this point. So like you might notice that like my brush strokes are pretty loose looking. Like I purposely do that to make it look more expressive, okay? I'm not going to polish this to the point where it looks like a photograph. To me, that's far less interesting of a painting style. But if you are someone who prefers a more polished or a more kind of like reaching for perfection style or look, then obviously I understand that and you would want to be true to your own style, okay? But I still have a ways to go. I still have to definitely apply paint a little thicker to a lot of these areas. But this, I think, will give you at least a good idea of how you should proceed. And it is a large painting, and I think the main thing is to work out that the proportions of your boxes are as accurate as possible before you start the painting part. And you can kind of see, not that this is a perfect representation, but this is kind of like where I was sitting looking at this. Then you can kind of see how that's similar to the way that it's composed. All right, good luck guys. I can't wait to see what you come up with.